Hey guys, welcome back. That one English teacher here, and I'm ready to get started on the summer reading. This video is going to be focusing on the English 3 honors assignments. We're going to be looking at the Romanticism period, and I'm going to start with poetry because those are the shortest texts. Today's poem is Ode, Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood by William Wordsworth. And I've got everything that I need to get started. I've got my text, I've got my pens, my pencils, my highlighters, I have post-it notes on standby in case I need them, and of course I have my notebook in which I'm going to be doing all of my collection of thoughts for my summer reading. Go ahead and get your supplies ready and meet me back here. Alright, awesome. Now that we have all of our materials together, it's time to get started. You need to find a quiet, well-lit area with minimal distractions. If you're someone like me and you can find yourself losing hours by playing on your phone, it's best to just go ahead and remove that distraction. You want to turn off your notifications, you want to have your screen facing down, and maybe even leave your phone in another room if you can handle the separation. It's best practice to not listen to music or watch television while you're focusing on an assignment. You don't want to be on the phone either or FaceTime because what you're going to end up doing is splitting your attention. If you split your attention, it could take you longer to complete the assignment and you might understand less if you're paying attention to more than one thing at a time. So use your time wisely and don't waste any of your efforts. That way you're putting everything that you can into the assignment while you're focusing on it. Alright, flashback to past me when I recorded my annotation video yesterday and actually didn't save any of the progress. So this is me annotating. My method for this text is to circle words that I don't know or don't understand in the context of the poem. And you can either stop every time you find a word you don't know, or you can wait until the end of your first read through and look up all of the unknown words at once, whichever works best for you. I kind of do it either way. If there's a word that is keeping me from really understanding what's going on, I'll stop. Otherwise, I wait to the end so I don't interrupt my flow. And that's right, I said first read through. So you need to go ahead and be prepared to read your shorter text more than once. Rereading helps you identify important elements that you may miss on a single read through. And rereading also helps you to lock in information to your brain. So the more familiar you are with the text, the more comfortable you'll be in responding to it. You may notice that I am writing with a purple pen. I have color coordinated my pens and create a key on the front of my text. So that purple indicates everything that I've recognized on my first read through. Blue indicates everything that I learned on my second read-through, and green is everything that I've learned from outside sources, because there are going to be times when you have to do a little bit of research to understand the context of what you're reading. If you're not familiar with the author and you're not familiar with the time period, this may be a necessary step. It can sometimes be a lot easier to interpret a text if you can understand the context in which it was written. This includes understanding a little bit about the author, the author's beliefs, and the time period in which they were writing, because the ideas of their contemporaries are often going to influence whatever it is that they are publishing. So let's take a moment to look into William Wordsworth and his impact on English literature. Wordsworth is a well-respected and revered lyrical poet in English literature. One of his famous quotes is that poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. So you'll see a lot of emotion in his writing. He also helped to launch the Romantic age in English literature through the publication of his text, Lyrical Ballads, which he co-authored with his friend Samuel Coleridge. So now you might be asking yourself, what is the Romanticism period and why do I care about it? The Romanticism period lasted a little over 3 decades, and that's a blip when it comes to the history of a nation, but it had a lasting impact, and we still see a lot of different influences in our culture today that are rooted in the Romantic period. For instance, the whole idea of childhood being a time of innocence and kids needing to be kids without having to get jobs is rooted in the Romantic period. There was a time when children were just treated like little adults and they were expected to have jobs and they were expected to bring in money. And education wasn't really necessarily considered something that children needed to do unless they were wealthy and their parents were willing to pay for it. Otherwise, they were working. Another area where we see influence from the Romantic period is the idea of romantic love. Romantic love wasn't a new idea, but a lot of times relationships and marriages were orchestrated for economic advancement, and women often had to have dowries in order to have a logical wedding. So the Romantics really pushed marrying someone because you love them and because you want to be with them, and we see that a lot today. Additionally, Romantics really care about nature, because during this time of the Enlightenment and the Industrial Revolution, there was this big push for forward progress. People wanted to have big factories. They wanted to utilize new machines and new technology, and so it led to pollution and it led to overcrowding as people from rural areas were coming into the big cities to try to fill in these factory jobs. It became very difficult to make a living off of any kind of rural enterprise, and so everybody was flocking to these factories. So the Romantics are rejecting industrialization outright and saying that it is a complete misuse of focus and that we need to get back to who we are. We need to focus on ourselves. We need to focus on our passions, our emotions, and especially we need to focus on nature. You can see the focus on nature in some of these famous Romanticism paintings. There was a faith in the natural land and the individual experience over that of society and what society says everyone should be accepting. Important values were nature, childhood, emotion, mystical elements, romantic love, and the idea of nostalgia. Now that we have more information about our author and our time period, we can apply that knowledge to our annotations and our interpretations of the text. I'm going to show you how I broke down this text in my own form and fashion. You don't have to copy me. Really what you want to do is try to establish your own system of annotations and be consistent throughout. So whatever system you establish on your first text, you want to apply it to the other text as well, so that way when you present your final product to your teacher, it's a lot easier for her or him to read and understand your thought processes. Okay, so just a reminder, everything that I did in purple was my first read-through, all of the blue was my second read-through, and green was information that I gained from outside sources. I circled words that I needed to define, and I even started up here with the title. For example, an ode is a lyric poem that is addressed to a particular subject. It is elevated in style and is written in a varied or irregular meter. That's important because now you understand the style of the poem and what to expect for that style. Intimations are indications or hints, information that is given with an indirect way. So there are hints of immortality from his memories of childhood. Okay, so I'm going to focus on this preface as an example of how multiple readings can give you a layered effect in your note-taking. On my first read-through, this line stood out to me, so I underlined it in purple. The child is father to the man. My corresponding note shows that I thought it was odd. Children as fathers, grown men as children. And then I indicated here that this is a different Wordsworth poem. Now, in my second read-through, I said, the fact that Wordsworth quotes his own poem seems a little odd. Did he do this, or did Poetry Foundation, the source where I got my text? It does have the same idea, joy in nature and childhood versus adulthood. Now, the third note is in green, so I had to go to an outside source to figure out some more information. My Heart Leaps Up, also known as The Rainbow, is a simple structured poem, has simple language. It describes the joy he feels in seeing a rainbow, and he has felt this joy since childhood. It gave me more information about the poem. I was able to understand that yes, he did actually quote himself at the beginning of this poem, and he was using this to illustrate the idea of nature and childhood throughout both. The highlighting on my annotations was done last, and what I did with that was, as I was deciding the 20 quotes that I wanted to use from my double entry journal, I highlighted and then numbered them. So it's different from the stanza numbers, which I did on my first read-through. These are my quotes that I would want to use in my summer reading response. So I highlighted things that I thought would be worthwhile in explaining. Because this is a poem and it's written in stanzas, you are able to take snippets of that stanza and turn them into quotes. So I could have from my quote 3, "It is not now as it hath been of yore, the things which I have seen I now can see no more." I'm leaving this out because it's unnecessary and I don't want to write unnecessary things when I'm doing my summer reading response. This is the quote that I'm actually wanting to unpack, so it would not help me to include this. The way I'll do that is I'll have the quotation marks at the beginning and the end of the quotes that is highlighted, and then I will have brackets with an ellipses in the middle to illustrate that I've left out some of the information. So that is my process in a nutshell. I'm not going to belabor the point by explaining every single mark that I made on the paper. I will briefly go through and show you all of my different annotations. This is a really good example of how thorough you want to be when you're doing your own annotations, especially if you intend to turn in your final completed product. This would be really impressive if you gave this to a teacher and illustrated your ability to annotate to such a degree. Okay, so now that you've annotated your text and you have all of the ink and all of the colors and all of the notes and all of the highlighting, you're probably wondering, what do I do now? Well, now you're going to take all of this processing that you've already done and you're going to put it in a form that is easy for your teacher to interpret. So you can choose either doing the chapter by chapter summary or the double entry journal. If you're going to do the chapter by chapter summary, I would recommend that you stay consistent in your style. You want to make sure that you're consistent in your style when it comes to the poems. If you treat every stanza as a chapter, make sure you do the exact same thing for the other poem that you do, because you have to do 2. Or you can print them out and then cover as many stanzas as fits on one page, and you just consider each page a chapter. You want complete sentences for both your plot summary and your personal response. In your personal response, you need to talk about your personal feelings and responses to the text, but you don't want to get repetitive. So don't say, this is cool, this is interesting, I like this one, this is important. It gets repetitive. You want to make sure that you're pointing out different things that stand out to you, but you are being genuine and you have a genuine effort presented. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how I handled the double entry journal assignment. I'm going to show you how I set up my notebook. I'm going to show you the first quote that I chose, and I'm going to show you my response just to give you an example, but I'm not going to give you all 20 because I know that you can do this on your own. I'm just showing you a model so that you know how to get started. Okay, so for my summer reading notebook, I have titled the very top so that I know and everybody who I show this to knows what each page is talking about. We're dealing with Romanticism, a poem. I have the title and author of the poem. I'm letting everybody know which option I've chosen. This is the double entry journal. If you're choosing the chapter summaries, you would indicate that here. I have my quote with stanza number and then my personal response columns. If you're doing the chapter summary, you would have your summary here and then your personal response here. The quote that I have chosen is "The child is father of the man," and I have indicated that it's from the preface because there is no stanza number since it comes before the actual poem. So this is very short. However, you do want to have complete sentences and at least one paragraph for every response that you do. So these are my 5 sentences that come in response to this quote. Okay, so I am going to read for you my response. I'm going to help you unpack it a little bit so you can use it as a model for your own. The quote that I am responding to is "The child is father of the man," and I respond with, "This line stands out because Wordsworth chose to quote one of his own poems to introduce the ode, so it must be important to him. The wording of this line is interesting because it's almost nonsensical at the initial read-through. However, on further inspection, one can interpret this line to mean that the child or childhood literally comes before the man or adulthood, so adults are born of children by way of beginning life as a child and going through maturation to become an adult. This wording seems to put a higher priority and importance on children over adults, which is a major theme in the work, as well as a pillar belief of the Romantics. Typically, children learn from their parents, but this line further seems to illustrate that adults should learn from children as we forget what it means to be a child as we grow." Okay, so just to unpack that a little bit with you, what I have done is I've indicated why that particular quote is important to the author and important to the overall theme or message of the work. I've tied it to the key beliefs of the Romantic period, and I've also illustrated how I have put some thought through multiple readings. So initially this line might not make sense, however on further inspection, blah 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 blah. So I'm showing a evolution in my thinking and my thought processing. So it's letting the audience or the teacher know that I've put significant thought into this quote in the way it exists in the text, the way it exists to the poet, and the way it exists in the context of the time period in which it was written. Alright guys, that wraps up our first summer reading text looked at and analyzed through the lens of annotation. Please join me on my next video when I'll be looking at The Eve of St. Agnes by John Keats, and we'll be tackling that text through metacognition, and I'll be walking you through the steps of thinking about what you're thinking about. Please leave any questions, comments, or concerns that you have in the comments section down below. Remember, I'm still learning, so any suggestions that you have about my filming or editing are greatly welcomed. Alright guys, thank you so much for showing up. I'll see you on the next one.